It's like the Democrats in the White House and Congress forgot the date. Now it's the 1st of the month, and rent and back rent is suddenly due for millions of Americans who have been shielded from eviction during the pandemic. We only learned of this yesterday. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters Friday evening after the House tried and failed to pass legislation that would extend the federal eviction moratorium. All right, who believes this? If you believe this, you are a fucking dumbass. Why would you even print that? Why would you print that? We just learned out about the eviction moratorium ending today. Oh, how did we never knew?
Let's mold in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's fog in the Central Committee right now.
So, on Friday, the Democrats failed to extend the eviction moratorium. My friend lives in Texas. Their landlord wants to raise it by 20%. Cori Bush slept outside the Capitol. Yeah, we're going to get to that. So rents are rising quickly everywhere. Median change in monthly change in median rent price. Look at this, chat. This is the largest 100 cities. It's from New York City, which is number 1, all the way to Tacoma, Washington. So anyway, rent is exploding everywhere. Real cool. Really cool. Glad to see it. Really, really enjoying ourselves. All right, chat. Let's talk about this eviction moratorium. I've been rambling for long enough.
I do want to ask you, by the way, on another subject, another story out of Capitol Hill that's moving, which is this push to address the end of the eviction moratorium that is going to end very, very soon. There had been a push, didn't succeed in the House, and there seems to be some frustration with your party's leadership for trying to kind of wedge this in to get this done now. What do you make of this in terms of how this has gone and what perhaps should be done to deal with evictions? A lot of people, millions of Americans potentially, are going to be upended when this moratorium lapses.
Joshua, I'm just going to be blunt. There's more than frustration. There is outrage at what happened today. Cori Bush, who has been unhoused, spoke so eloquently about why we need to extend the moratorium so people aren't coming week, kicked out of their homes. Maxine Waters had a bill to extend it. We said we could extend it, if not till the end of the year, at least a few months. And the leadership has refused to bring it for a vote. And the reason they're not bringing it for a vote is that some Democrats privately have tried to kill this bill because of special interests of realtors and other groups. And it's unconscionable that we don't have a vote on the House floor, that we're protecting some members to kill this behind closed doors and aren't being transparent. It's just wrong.
So basically what happened is Nancy Pelosi at the last second brought up Cori Bush's law to try to extend the eviction moratorium. And she did it what was known through a unanimous consent motion. So in a unanimous consent motion, if any single rep, Republican or Democrat, objects to the law, it does not pass. And so, predictably, a Republican objected. But the reason they brought it up as a unanimous consent motion is because they knew that a Republican would object. And there are Democrats who were against it, but didn't want to publicly come out against it because they would be primaried. So Nancy Pelosi pulled this move to protect the right-wing Democrats. And since that time, Cori Bush has decided that she was going to sleep on the Capitol steps in protest until the Democrats do something about the eviction moratorium.
It's important for me personally to be here and to spend the night out here because in just a few hours, we are at risk for having 7 million people who are unhoused, who will receive eviction notices and will have just days to find a place or to come up with the money to be able to pay back rent. I know what that's like. I have been evicted before myself. I have had to sleep in my car myself. And so as a sitting congresswoman, there is no way.
Wait, right-wing Democrats are a thing? Wait. Are you kidding?
I could just allow Congress to recess and go on vacation and for me to just go on with my life and not care about the 7 million people. I had people around me, so I felt safe, which I didn't feel safe when I was unhoused. I had food sitting here, I didn't always have food. I had enough blankets to keep me warm because it didn't get too cool last night. But that's not the reality of what happens, on many nights when you are unhoused.
No, I'm not joking. I'm new to leftism. So there are multiple different wings of the party, so to speak, and you'll see that some of the Democrats are conservative.
Millions of Americans could potentially be homeless within days after the House failed to reach a deal to extend a ban on evictions. The CDC order, which prevents landlords from evicting renters for failing to pay their rent.
By the way, chat, nobody's been paying rent. Has that harmed the economy? Hey, chat, just let this boggle your mind for a second. Nobody's been paying rent. How's the economy doing? Not nobody, but millions of people have not been paying rent. How's the economy doing from that? It's totally fine. It's almost like rents and landlords are purely parasitic and drain from the economy. It's almost as if we have housing as a profit maker and it's not actually important for the economy. Because there was an eviction moratorium. There wasn't a mortgage moratorium. Landlords still made record profit this year. Do you have a link for that, Rich Kim? I didn't know that. That's a good talking point. I never understood why these people exist. They just buy up all of the houses that Gen Z adults could buy just because they can. When I was young, I never understood how you have to buy a house. You're not paying for it to be made or for it to be cleaned or furnished. All they do is buy up dirt. Land is just dirt. Why does it have value? Because of the right of exclusivity. That's all that a land deed is. It's the right to say you can't come onto my land and I can use the government's monopoly on violence against you if you ignore my rules. It's to give everybody a private tyranny. And you know what? There's reasons for that. I mean, I want to have a private space where nobody else can go in, and that's just mine, my personal space. That makes sense. But ownership in land, when it's not for being actively used and just being a profit leech, is bad and doesn't do anything. Landlords are useless, especially in housing. Now, there's an argument. Some people will be like, well, I don't want to own every, apartment I'm in if I'm only going to be there for a little while. I'm a student. I'm transitory. I'm coming in to do a job for the short term. It's not where I'm going to set down my roots. We need to have some temporary housing. I couldn't agree more with that. And we need to have some surplus of housing that exists in every community because people are moving in, people are moving out, housing falls into disrepair. You need to have surplus housing. You need more houses and more apartments than people so that natural flow can be and natural growth can take place. People have that housing available. Absolutely right. But the way we should be structuring our housing policy is so that it is affordable and high quality because shelter is a basic human need. Everybody needs it. And in a modern industrial society, we have way more than enough wealth and productivity to guarantee every American citizen high quality housing. And the best way to do that in an affordable manner is through community land trusts, public housing, and tenant-owned development. Owner-occupied land. What's happening on the contrary right now in America is investors are buying up land, buying up single-family homes, getting mortgages. They have access to a federal funds rate. Federal funds rate is at 0%, so banks are able to produce money at a very low interest rate, and they could turn around and lend that out as mortgages, and they can lend that to investors at extremely low interest rates, and so they can take that basically free money, turn around, buy up all the property, and then charge you double in rent what their financing costs are. They're pure parasites. Apparently, there are like 30 empty homes for every homeless person in the U.S. It used to be a quarter of that. We have owners of business buildings in my small town that aren't being used by anyone, just sitting there, and one of the key contributors of my town dying because they aren't selling them. Do I endorse free housing? Of course. Here's the link for the record profit of landlords. Despite eviction ban complaints, big landlords report record profits. Large landlords have been critical of the federal eviction moratorium that was been in place since September and extended on Monday to June 30th. Property owners and groups that represent them say that being unable to remove tenants who are behind on rent is unfair to property owners and will put their finances in jeopardy. However, a CBS Money Watch review of the financial statements and loan records of the nation's largest landlords suggests that the eviction moratorium, which has saved millions of Americans behind on their rent from becoming homeless during the pandemic, has done little to dent bottom lines. In fact, large property owners have predominantly been profitable during the pandemic. Invitation Homes, the nation's largest single-family home landlord, for example, reported that 2020 was its most profitable year yet later. I'll tell you why that is. 0% interest. Their financing costs are extremely low. They could borrow money for nothing. 2020 was its most profitable year ever. The company was started in 2012 by a private equity firm, Blackstone, to snap up tens of thousands of homes left empty by the Great Recession's foreclosure crisis and turn them into rental units. Last year, it collected $50 million more in rent during the pandemic than it had from those same houses the year before. That's factoring in any tenants who weren't able to pay. Like other landlords, Invitation Homes got an unexpected benefit from the pandemic itself. One of the biggest costs that landlords have is turnover. Invitation Homes said fewer of its tenants moved during the pandemic than normal, even putting aside federal and state eviction restrictions. As a result, turnover costs dropped by nearly $5 million last year. The company also said property administration costs fell by nearly $3 million. What's more, the moratorium doesn't appear to have fully halted the company's eviction efforts. A study earlier this month from the Institute for Policy Studies on how larger landlords have profited the pandemic found that Invitation Homes had filed at least 550 evictions in Florida, Georgia, Illinois, and Texas since the beginning of the pandemic. Most of those, according to the study, were filed after the September 2020 federal eviction moratorium was ordered. When there's a great concentration of corporate landlords, rents tend to be higher, eviction rates tend to be higher, and affordability becomes a real issue. In all, Invitation Homes' profit rose 30% during the pandemic to nearly $200 million in 2020, up from nearly $150 million the year before. Shares of the company were up 64% in the past year. At $32 a piece, they're currently less than $1 from their all-time high, which was set a few weeks before lockdowns began. So in other words, this corporate landlord is making more money with the eviction moratorium. Amazing. While we had a successful year from a business results perspective, we also feel very good about the year we had in supporting our residents, particularly those suffering financially. While eviction is always our last resort and we will preserve our legal rights as allowed by the CDC and state orders once we have exhausted all other options. But Tanner has told Wall Street analysts that the ban makes it impossible for the company to predict its future profits. He expects the company's outlook and bottom line to improve once he's able to freely evict people again. Invitation Homes is also one of the largest and most prominent members of the National Rental Home Council, which has called for the end of the eviction moratorium. It's been a difficult time for landlords, except the evidence is that it's not true. However, other landlords seem to have weathered the pandemic and then some. Rents at Mid-America apartment communities rose 2.5% in 2020 on properties that owned pre-pandemic. Mid-America owns roughly 100,000 apartments, making it one of the largest landlords in the U.S. The company had nearly $1.7 billion in revenue last year, despite it having offered rent deferments to 8,000 of its tenants since the beginning of the pandemic. Mid-America's operating profits jumped to nearly $430 million in 2020. This was up 60% from the previous year, and by far the highest increase the company has ever reported. From apartment developer Avalon Bay Communities, rents on its properties owned before the pandemic fell 3.2% last year to just over $2 billion. In February, the company's executives told Wall Street analysts that just 3% of its apartments were occupied by renters who weren't paying. The executives said they expected the eviction moratorium to be extended through the summer. They also said they expected Avalon Bay would get a nice boost from the most recent stimulus bill, which includes $50 billion in rental assistance. A February report from real estate data firm TREP found that owners of apartment buildings, unlike other property owners, were having little trouble making their mortgage payments. As of January, the delinquency rate for loans tied to apartment buildings was just 2.3%. Owners of hotels and malls were having a much harder time keeping up with their loans, with the delinquency rates rising to 19% and 13% respectively. Diane Yentl, president of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, said the argument that landlords need the eviction moratorium to end because of financial hardship is very hard to make for any landlord. Texan person says, my boss is a landlord, and while we had an eviction moratorium here in Harris County, we had the tenant apply for federal aid through the Catholic charity, and we recovered all the lost rents. Some of the larger landlords had access to other resources or protections, including Paycheck Protection Program loans and forbearance programs. With the latest stimulus bill, Congress has put billions into rental assistance, with most of that money going straight to landlords, so help is on the way. It's essential that the federal eviction moratorium is extended, at least until these emergency funds are expended.
And expires at midnight.
Holy shit,
in a last-ditch effort
dude.
to get their colleagues to vote to extend the moratorium, some Democratic lawmakers slept on the steps of the U.S. Capitol last night. One of those lawmakers, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, joins me now. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about the experience last night, and then what you hope to achieve by making this kind of show of force with those who you're concerned may be evicted from their homes.
Well, I think the point here, Ryan, is that many families are on the precipice of devastation.
We're having weird
And
Fs.
the fact of the matter is that families are running out of options, but government has many still on the table.
Nationalize the corporate landlords? Absolutely. Absolutely. If I was one, if I was God King of America, or chair of the Central Committee of the United Soviet States of America, nationalization of all landlords would be numero uno move.
Not yet been exhausted. Pre-pandemic, there were 3.7 million eviction filings. So there are already so many families that were vulnerable, and that has only been exacerbated by this pandemic-induced recession. And so we have three options remaining. The Senate is still in session, and they can act and extend this eviction moratorium. Secondly, the House can reconvene, and we can pass Chairwoman Waters' emergency bill to extend the eviction moratorium. And finally, the White House and the CDC can act. The reason why we are here and why we came last night is because we want to affirm that we are one human family and that our destinies are tied. And eviction is a policy choice. And the fact that we failed to act, not out of an inability to do something to stave off this crisis, a national tent city, an eviction tsunami, it was an unwillingness. I agree with Chairwoman Waters, the author of the emergency bill. I serve on the Financial Services Committee. We should have fought harder. So again, families are running out of options, but we still have many available on the table, and we need to exhaust every single one of them. We're talking about projections of anywhere from 7 to 11 million people who could be evicted, and still in the midst of a pandemic, while the variant is surging. Eviction is already violent, but to evict people in the midst of a pandemic is cruel, inhumane, unacceptable, and 100% preventable.
So, Congresswoman, you mentioned that you believe the CDC should extend the moratorium. The Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has said the same thing. The White House disagrees. Their legal team says that's not an option because of a Supreme Court decision last month. Do you disagree with the White House legal team? And do you think the president has done enough to try and prevent this crisis from happening with very little time left to go?
We absolutely should have received word from the White House much earlier than we did. We simply ran out of time. There is still time, though, to right this wrong. I do believe that the White House and the CDC should act unilaterally. And if we are challenged by the courts, that will still buy these families time. And that is what we need. The other reason why we need to extend this eviction moratorium is because, yes, the states have the money and they need time. They still need time to get these funds out. So since January, I have been with my progressive colleagues organizing, lobbying, writing bills, lobbying the White House. Weeks ago, I led the letter with progressive colleagues to extend the eviction moratorium by that additional month. And then again, we heard very late that the White House would not be extending that eviction moratorium, and Congress was not given the time needed really to act. And I agree with Speaker Pelosi that a failure to act to extend the eviction moratorium is a moral.
Have people already been evicted, or does it take some time for it to take into effect? So if there is a standing order, then I don't see any reason why a sheriff couldn't process those orders. I'm not aware of sheriffs that do evictions on the weekend. That's something I'm not sure about. I think that's probably true in some jurisdictions and not others. But yeah, I mean, with the eviction moratorium lifted, Monday, you will definitely see landlords at magistrates, at local judges arguing for eviction. So, it may not happen, the flood may not happen Monday, but in a week, 2-3 weeks, if there really are millions of people that are behind and the landlords want to pursue them, then they absolutely can.
Imperative, and the fact that we did not do that is a moral failing. It was a moral imperative to act, to disrupt and prevent this crisis, and it is a moral failing that we did not act.
Mm-hmm. So you tweeted recently that you said, quote, eviction is a policy choice, and a violent one at that, and the indifference by many is heartbreaking. I know many of your fellow progressives believe that it's your movement that led to Democrats controlling the House and Senate, and maybe even putting Joe Biden in the White House. Do you feel that it is your party, the Democratic Party, that right now is failing the very people that they promised to protect in this last election?
I absolutely believe that in this moment, yes, we are failing the American people and the most vulnerable. Eviction is a policy choice. We can disrupt this eviction tsunami. We can prevent this national tent city, this public health crisis. Our families have already experienced unprecedented hardship. We should not be evicting anyone. Housing is a human right, but we certainly should not be doing that in the midst of a pandemic. And we have tools available to stop it. There is not a deficit of resource or opportunity or tools. I do believe there is a deficit of empathy, and that is across both aisles. And that's what we're here for today. That's why I slept here last night. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But nowhere near as uncomfortable as the families right now who are in limbo, who are wondering how they will survive, who are living in real fear, who are looking to us to intervene and to stand in the gap. And we still have time. So the Senate is still in session. They can extend this eviction moratorium. By midnight, the White House and the CDC can act unilaterally, or the House can be called back into session so that we can pass the emergency bill offered by Chairwoman Waters to extend this eviction moratorium. Again, the American people have run out of options, but those of us in positions of leadership and power, we have not. And we must act, and we must act urgently. And we have to meet the needs of this multiracial, multi-generational movement of the most marginalized who made this Democratic majority possible. This is the moment. We must meet the moment and meet the needs of the most marginalized, a movement of people who made this Democratic majority possible. This is about us being responsive to the most basic needs of the human family in the midst of unprecedented hurt. And so that's why we're out here.
Okay, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, as this deadline looms, you spent the night outside the Capitol trying to impress upon leaders in Washington to take action. We so much appreciate your time, Congresswoman, and we'll have to see. This deadline is fast approaching. We'll see if the will, as you mentioned it, is there to take the responsibility needed. All right, thank you, Congresswoman.
Yeah, I mean,
legally speaking.
So the big issue that we've got right now, it's like the Democrats in the White House and Congress forgot the date. Now it's the 1st of the month, and rent and back rent is suddenly due for millions of Americans who have been shielded from eviction during the pandemic. Millions of households face eviction over the next month when lawmakers are on their annual August recess. And some have predicted a full-blown eviction crisis just as a surge in COVID cases from the highly contagious Delta variant may be prompting renewed calls for people to stay home and keep their distance. We only learned of this yesterday! House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters Friday evening after the House tried and failed to pass legislation that would extend the federal eviction moratorium. All right, who believes this? If you believe this, you are a fucking dumbass. Why would you even print that? Why would you print that? We just learned out about the eviction moratorium ending today. Oh, we never knew. There was not enough time to socialize it within our caucus as well as to build a consensus necessary, she said, with a promise from her top lieutenant to revisit the issue as soon as possible, probably after the break. Chat, they're not done for their break until mid-September. I swear it's like 2009 all over again, a bipartisan bill being negotiated, ACA and infrastructure, while the landlords, banks, get bailed out and millions get evicted. You got it! Pelosi was likely referring to the fact that Biden administration only formally asked Congress to pass an extension on Thursday. Yas, Rob, thanks for the tier 1. 2 days before the program expired. Some White House officials made a late-stage push last week to re-examine the legal potential for President Joe Biden to extend the moratorium, but were told by administration lawyers it wasn't possible, according to people familiar with the deliberations, aka they didn't want to do it. You can find a lawyer to make an argument for any position. When Joe Biden says, oh, I wanted to do it, but my lawyers wouldn't let me. Motherfucker, we had lawyers argue that torture wasn't torture. Well, we can do the torture in Guantanamo Bay because technically it's not American soil. So the Constitution doesn't apply. It's like a no man's land for America's, it is American military base, but on that military base, the laws don't apply. The Constitution doesn't apply. Therefore, we could torture legally, even though we've signed anti-torture treaties. We're allowed to torture in Guantanamo because it's like a special magic Christmas land. That was a fucking argument. And that was the policy of the United States of America. You can find lawyers to say that you can extend the eviction moratorium. You can find lawyers to do that. Add the missed mortgage payments of the landlords to the end of their loan so the tenants don't have to come up with 6 months of rent immediately. Oh, Key Winston. Well, that would be logic, right? We could have lawyers argue that Trump was a good person, so there is that too. I mean, you never know from the White House late ask or Pelosi's lame excuse that the Supreme Court was very clear 1 month ago. Either Congress could vote again to authorize the program or evictions could go forward. Not that a successful House vote would have accomplished anything. An eviction moratorium bill that can't pass the Democratic House would have been laughed out of the evenly decided Senate, where the rules give any one senator the right to slow everything down. There are plenty of Republicans who opposed the temporary hold on evictions when it was first enacted during the Trump administration in September 2020. Today, there is a gaping divide over whether the government can or should tell private landlords they can't kick tenants out. Of course the government can. Of course the government can. This is just nonsense. This story of Democrats' failure to manage time just as much about Republicans of... Oh yeah, that's what it is. When you read the mainstream media, chat, does your brain rot like mine does? Does anyone believe this was a failure to manage time? Oh yeah, that's what it was. They just failed to manage time. They were just so busy. They were so busy passing nothing They were so busy not voting on things, so busy just sitting on their ass, that they failed to manage the time. They're just incompetent. They're not evil. The Democrats like being considered incompetent, but moral. And the Republicans like to be considered evil, but effective. Even though the opposite is true. They're evil, incompetent, and corrupt, and the Democrats are corrupt. This was as much of a failure as taking a knee at the end of a football game where you're losing by 3 points. Yeah. I absolutely believe that in this moment, yes, we are failing the American people, says Ayanna Pressley. And it's a clear sign that the extraordinary efforts by the government to help Americans through the pandemic are temporary, even if the virus is here to stay. Expanded unemployment benefits the Democrats were able to sustain without Republican help will expire in September. A novel new direct payment for parents meant to pull kids out of poverty will end in 2022 unless they can find a way to extend it. What may be the most frustrating for Democrats who helped Biden enact his American Rescue Plan to fight COVID this year is they earmarked money to help renters, but most of it has not yet been spent.
Blame her.
Well, I think there's a couple of issues here. First of all, you are absolutely correct in that the House and House leadership had the opportunity to vote to extend the moratorium. And there were many, and there was frankly a handful of conservative Democrats in the House that threatened to get on planes rather than hold this vote. And we have to really just call a spade a spade. We cannot
name names.
Blame the Republican Party when House Democrats have a majority. Now, there is something to be said for the fact that this court order came down on the White House a month ago, and the White House waited until the day before the House adjourned to release a statement asking on Congress to extend the moratorium. This came after weeks. I sit on the Financial Services Committee, which has jurisdiction over housing. We had, the housing secretary there asking about the administration's stance. We asked the Biden administration about their stance, and they were not being really forthright about that advocacy and that request until the day before the House adjourned. And so the House was put into I believe, a needlessly difficult situation. And it's not just me saying that. Financial Services Chairwoman Maxine Waters has made that very clear as well. And so there's a couple of contributing factors here. We have governors who are also not getting this emergency rental assistance out in time, which is forcing this extension, what we would like an extension of the moratorium. The fact of the matter is that the problem is here. The House should reconvene and call this vote and extend the moratorium. There's about 11.
And AOC again and again just hits it out of AOC hits it out of the park. Now the problem is she doesn't name names. Now that's what's really frustrating to me. And so Cori Bush and the squad have been out on the steps of the Capitol. All right, let's talk about the people. Let's talk about Cori Bush, and we'll keep moving.
Hey, everybody, Chuck here, outside the Capitol. I want to talk about my timeline, which is kind of pissing me off. Okay, normally I get mad at liberals because they don't come out to anti-police terror protests. They don't come out to anti-war protests. They don't come out when Nazis are in town. This time I'm kind of mad at leftists in my timeline. People I like, normally. All I keep seeing is the word performative. People comparing Cori Bush to Nancy Pelosi? Really? Was Nancy Pelosi on the front line in Ferguson against police in riot gear over and over? Did she do that? Was Nancy Pelosi homeless and know what homelessness feels like and internalize that? I don't think so. Did Nancy Pelosi go on the congressional floor and give a speech about a free Palestine and connect the dots between Ferguson and policing here and what's going on in Gaza? Have you heard that from anybody? Are people comparing that when Nancy Pelosi's bought by AIPAC? This is a logic that I don't understand. Okay? So the very same dynamic that made Cori Bush call a protest last night on her own just with a tweet, and now you got a bunch of people behind me, that's the very same dynamic as what brought her here was what she was doing in Ferguson. She's trying something different. Yes, they were trying to do things a month ago. Get out of your fucking ass. If you don't want to be part of the protest, that's fine. You don't have to shit on it because that's what happened in Ferguson, but you don't know that. People don't know that. People always telling protesters to go home. If you don't want to be part of it, that's fine. Don't shit on it. Don't shit on people trying to do something when you're doing nothing. Because that's my timeline. Just sit the motherfucker out. It's annoying. It doesn't mean electoral politics is a panacea. I'm not really with electoral politics. She's trying something, and she's sincere. Stop saying she's insincere. She's fucking sincere as fuck. That's a very different question if you think it will work or not. Most protests don't work. You do the shit anyway because you believe in it and hope some will work along the way. That's how it goes.
These are the type of people that we have on the online left. Kind of useless. I tweeted something kind of similar to this, where I said, one of the annoying developments of 2021 is an entire population of leftists who think politicians on the left are not allowed to make rhetorical arguments or organize protests in order to influence public opinion in our direction. It's maddening. There is a certain percentage of very performative people who seem to think we've done all the persuading. We won the election. Bernie Sanders is president. They're in some sort of like fantasy alternate 2021 where we control all the levers of power. All the leftists are in control and they're just breaking their promises. Please, can I live in your fantasy? I want to live inside your fantasy brain for a bit. Can someone let me live inside their fantasy brain where Bernie Sanders is president and AOC is Speaker of the House? Can I live in that fantasy world? I want to tell you a story. Oh my God. Max Blumenthal, dumb fuck now. Goes to talk to Cori Bush. An intense argument broke out last night at the Capitol between an activist and members of the squad on their refusal to directly confront Pelosi. I asked Rep. Cori Bush about the exchange and why the squad didn't use its leverage to force a Medicare for all vote. Dude, how many times do we have to answer you? Dude, that was an idea a fucking YouTuber came up with out of his ass a week before the speaker vote. It's been 8 fucking months. 8 months. 8 fucking months. Move on. Move the fuck on, dude.
That's where we are. And I heard, like, last night there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people, but I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for all vote, and why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow in Congress, why the squad didn't because leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage. What?
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight. And I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and
it absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pramila Jayapal's bill in the House.
Whoa, stop explaining to me how the civics works, Cori Bush. You're a congresswoman. You snap your fucking fingers. Don't teach me about parliamentary procedure. By the way, I hate you because I came up with a parliament procedure trick that doesn't work. Don't let me please stop telling me how fucking parliamentary procedure works. By the way, she's a fraud for not doing my parliamentary procedure trick. That's totally made up.
Our bill, we cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
But Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
Well,
I'm sorry, Matt. We're fine at this.
Why can't she answer the question?
We're here to talk about the eviction.
But I feel like it's all about health care.
Thank you.
No, really appreciate that.
We appreciate your time.
We're here for a reason. It's about the moratorium.
Why is that? I can't ask about Medicare for all.
The Congresswoman has slept 1 hour. She's done a lot of labor.
I'm trying to get people out here, too.
I respect your work.
I'm trying to do
Oh, yeah, he's trying to get people out there by asking dumb fucking questions were answered 8 fucking months ago. They're brain dead.
The same thing you all are doing.
Thank you for being here.
But why can't she could just answer it and then I go away? I'm not trying to attack her or anything. I'm not trying to smear her.
We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach out.
But why is that issue, the Medicare for all vote, so she was wrapping up her?
I'm not having this conversation.
But she was wrapping up her. I know she was wrapping up her answer. Then I was going to say thank you. Everybody come out.
I appreciate.
But why didn't you let her just wrap up her answer?
I really appreciate you. We're happy to give you a contact. You can feel free to reach out. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks.
All right, somebody who was actually there besides just malding over this. So Christian Mink was there. Friday night, there was a guy who identified himself as from the People's Party. Ilhan chatted with him for a long while and went to follow him on Twitter. There she found offensive memes about the squad. She asked him to explain, and he launched into a rant about their failures to push Medicare for all. In a long hour, it seemed like forever, intimate conversation, the members listened with incredible patience despite the guy's dismissive, disrespectful tone and words. Reps Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Cori Bush responded to his questions thoughtfully, detailing dedicated years-long and current efforts to push Medicare for all, including local organizing as well as whipping votes. While they're personally invested in this legislation, they also explain why pushing them to get the bill to the floor makes no strategic/procedural sense. Members can't bring bills to the floor that they didn't write if it'd fail, which is why the bill's authors aren't forcing a vote now. We're gaining votes. Work on that. One member asked the guy why their group doesn't target Bernie, someone who could push the bill to the floor, with their ask. And vitriol. The guy refused to answer. He didn't answer any of their questions, just went back to his same tired, illogical accusations. The conversational pattern. Guy lobs accusatory question, why didn't you or won't you do XYZ? Members respond with detailed info. Guy lames same accusatory question as if nothing was said. It was ridiculous and distracted from the urgent issue we are here for, housing. Hounding these women of color about Medicare for all doesn't make strategic sense, even if you think forcing a failing vote now is a good move. They aren't the bill's authors. They aren't the ones in the building with the most influence with Pelosi to get the bill to the floor. Far from it. So why is it that these women who get constant death threats as they push Medicare for all and other progressive causes more than anyone else are the ones who receive all the blame and hate and vitriol? The only reason could be the same reason far-right targets them, racism and sexism. I got to tell you something. It's not just that. Although that is certainly part of why it's so, why people like to yell at AOC is sexism. I mean, that's true. Absolutely true. There's a reason why the right wants to bring up women of color. I mean, because it's going to stimulate you. That's it. It takes the Fox News guys and makes them bay like wolves. Because they see, woman, black woman, woman of color. And that's true. But the other element is they're popular. They're popular on the left. So when you put AOC up there, it gets you clout. It gets you clout. And people are going to engage with it. I'm engaging with it. I'm engaging with it right now. Why am I engaging with it right now? I'm engaging with it right now because I care about Medicare for all. It feels like these people are trying to sabotage the left for corporate interests. I don't know. I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to come up with some hypothetical fucking, three-dimensional chess CIA shit. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that at all. You could just. The reason is it's very simple. It's very, very fucking simple. It doesn't take, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. The reason is because they're trying to clout farm for YouTube, for Twitter likes. They're trying to get in the gym. It's exact. People ask me, Mike, how do you get a following on Twitch or YouTube or whatever? It's the same playbook. You work the algorithm. You get a larger creator to cover you positively, to bring you in. Then you make some pretty solidly engaging content. There are some techniques and tactics for doing that. So, and then you'll get in those, and you get into that community's algorithm. And if the host of that community says this person is a good person to watch them, some percentage of the people will go and watch you from the mere exposure effect. And if it's positive coverage and you get looped into their community, you're going to pick up some of their viewers, and it's going to cause you to get growth. And then the algorithm is going to see you have growth from that positive interaction, and it's going to start recommending you to people that watch that original creator. It's going to start recommending you to people that look at similar creators, and then you get hooked in the algorithm. And as long as you have that positive relationship with that creator, they're going to push more and more viewers toward you. That's how you do it. It's very fucking easy. So these people are not going after AOC with real legitimate questions. They're doing it as an algorithmic strategy. Rep Omar pulled one of the memes on this guy's timeline, used to mock AOC, and asked him about it. He denied that it was racist, sexist, offensive. Definitely was. He chuckled and said, "It's just a meme." That made it crystal clear. This guy had an opportunity to have a legitimate conversation about how to further goals he ostensibly shares with members. It was a small group of us for hours. They were engaged to try to make it productive, but he honestly just bullied them. That's not organizing. Took basically everyone at the Capitol steps Friday night being like, "Come on, dude, just stop. It's 2 a.m. Asked and answered repeatedly to finally get him to stop pointlessly haranguing the members. From that, I learned everything I need to know about his movement." And that's what that shit is. That's what that shit is. And it's garbage. It's garbage. We do politics here every morning starting at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. You can watch us here on Twitch. We're the morning guy. The morning politics guy. Politics Frogs in every single day. Same time, 10 a.m. Day in, day out. And we carry you through your morning and early afternoon politics needs. And if you need more, Mike from PA, we have a YouTube channel. We talked about suburbs, the My Pillow guy, Ted Cruz. We talked about DSA. Amazing. Making fun of Tim Pool. Amazing. Look at all of these amazing videos. Get in there, watch them. We have me on Twitter. You got to follow me on Twitter, chat. I'm at 20,614 subs. That means I got like 40 followers on Twitter in the last day. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. Go follow us on Twitter. And of course, join the Discord, where we have an incredible community of left-wing streamers. We have left-wing community. We talk about the stream. We talk about politics. There's gaming content. It's a really awesome, supportive place. Direct action, mutual aid. And you can just let off some steam. And also, you can help produce the show. One of the things I do is I look at the links that are put into the news content suggestions chat room on the Discord. Join the Discord. Come hang out. And maybe what you want me to talk about will be part of the next show.